Welcome to another episode of On the Line. I'm Joe Mullings.
And I'm Holly Scott.
And today we're going to be discussing something that's super fun right now in the industry. It's medical devices and consumer products. Have the lines been blurred?
For sure. Have we not seen this happening over the last, say, 20 years and now more than ever?
You're going to go back 20 on that?
I'm going to go back 20. I'm going to go back 20.
I can go back to A for L with you and I'll let you jump into
Oh,
that. But
my goodness.
I can't think of where, okay, I'm going to call you on it. What 20 years ago did you see?
Well, think about the inception of Corventis.
Because this has only been around for 11.
Right. But Corventis, and I'm not going to oversimplify what they do because they loaded a sensor into a pretty interesting wearable technology. But that was where we started hearing buzz around remote telemetry systems and taking
years.
something. But no, their inception was early.
Really?
So yeah, they were like
Because they got bought by
2009.
Medtronic in like 14 or something
No,
like
but
that for
we
like
were-
150 million or something.
We worked with them early, like
Mike
2009.
from Corventis.
Yeah,
Right,
we
okay.
had so I remember where these ideas started, but even back then it was very challenging for individuals to make that leap from non-medtech into medtech, although the talent is valuable, and now it's being recognized as more valuable than ever. So I'm actually happy for the industry to see the diversity coming in.
Yeah, and you can point to it. So everybody's acknowledging the Apple Johnson & Johnson relationship. You've worked and built with some EyeRhythm, I think, you and your team in the past. We're working with Gauss right now, Gauss, and Sid and his team over there have taken an off-the-shelf iPad and off-the-shelf cameras and sensors, and they've created a technology that, simply put, with a high level of predictability, can tell you how much blood loss there is in a surgery. In particular, they're on L&D, labor and delivery, right now, and I think Jay sits on that board with Fred, Mole. There's some like super interesting people on that board. They're getting a lot of financing. And again, that's a pure play consumer product through FDA approval into the OR.
Yeah, it's fascinating. They're using technology that one already knows, including physicians and clinicians, right? So it's easy for them to use, and giving them the data that they can get on a patient real time. So it's amazing. Yeah, we remember the days of what's the cloud, Joe? I mean, they're talking about throwing data up into the cloud, and one client.
Well, when we
in
had that
particular.
search, yeah.
Yeah.
They were out of Canada originally, right? Analytics for Life or
Analytics for
Carolinas or
Life,
something.
Still and still trucking, doing really well. Their clinicals are going well. They are exactly that. They're collecting information about individuals' cardiovascular condition, and because of the capabilities associated with software that did not come from medtech in terms of talent, they're able to predict and diagnose much quicker and much more cost effective.
I remember that, J.O., that opening when you came to me and they were looking for data scientists. Holly's like, great, Greg gave us that connection, I think. We're looking for data scientists to take data from an EKG and put it up on the cloud. And I don't know if this was 2011 or 2012. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? All I do is find catheter people.
Right. What do you mean? Nobody in medtech does this. How are we going to find somebody in medtech?
Right. And so now, and even myself guilty, just a couple years ago, I said, be wary, and I'll totally fall on this sword, be wary of your career, and I coined the word medsumers, medical devices and consumer products, medsumer products. And today, honestly, if you're in medtech, you should absolutely consider taking a little bit of a right-hand turn and go into a consumer product slash cloud-heavy, data-heavy, app-heavy, again, on the phone, we call it the last mile, app-heavy experience for a couple years and not worry about losing your medical device cred.
Oh yeah, it actually only adds to, frankly, because the future is only getting more robust for individuals to have the user experience exposure, whether it's software or marketing, user design, design coming from environments that are consumer intensive, it's extremely valuable.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. So UI, UX, user experience, user interface, tremendously important. We're seeing more and more medical devices from the interaction side, whether it's a clinician, whether it's a doc, whoever's in the equation, we're seeing organizations intelligently starting design at the UI UX point of engagement and then backing tech into it that way.
Right.
Software, until recently, has been tremendously better and more robust coming from a non-medtech background. And then the entire interface on the transferring the information from the device to the data aggregator, and then delivering that in an intelligent fashion for decisions to be made by the clinicians. Those are all non-traditional medtech moves.
Right, exactly. No, and it's non-traditional experience that the individual can look to gain when they move from one to the other. Remember, the fear was within medtech was if you bring in this engineer or this marketing person or whomever into this highly regulated world, they're going to be so frustrated. They're not going to be able to handle the documentation, the regulatory requirements, and so on. And now, yes, there are those that we have to make sure fit and have the patience and the wherewithal that if they don't get the app out in 6 months, they're not going to bail. But there is the bigger picture of there's a lot of people out there that are drawn to something more meaningful, some more meaningful work than perhaps a game or a simple, disposable consumer product that it doesn't have as much merit.
And keep in mind too, if you're not in medtech right now, it doesn't mean you've got to go into a medtech play that you have to go through the FDA regulatory cycle. So whether it's 510K, IDE, PMA, if you're not in medtech, those terms may not make sense to you, but basically it's regulatory oversight by the FDA. There are more and more daily companies coming up that are developing products in the training side with virtual reality, augmented reality, imaging, navigation, that organizations are not going through the regulatory life cycle or even the regulatory burden on the financial or clinical side. And if you want to feel really good about yourself and you're not a medtech listening to this, think about just looking into the industry because saving a person's life, impacting humanity, potentially saving somebody you know's life or N-1 from you, I will tell you after 3 decades and you more than 2 decades in the industry, invariably we ask people all the time, why medtech? And because they wake up every day feeling super good about the work they're doing while they may make 20% less than Facebook people or LinkedIn people, what have you. At the end of the day, most people migrate to this industry for a higher calling.
Correct. Yeah, and it's an exceptional way to leverage all of those strengths and grow.
And with the money being made right now and outside venture money coming in, I believe that we're seeing it already. Not I believe. Double E's, software people, systems people, clinical people, marketing people on direct to consumer, and I want to come back to that direct to consumer experience. The salaries are being driven up dramatically. And some of that's because the tech coming out of Silicon Valley has to be competitive because you have to go after rape and pillage the non-medtech companies where the salaries are high.
Exactly.
And we've had that with a number of clients out there. We report back. All we do is report the market. We don't make it.
Right.
We tell clients, look, if you want this person with this software background, they're making an extra $150,000 a year on their RSUs out of Facebook or Waze or Uber.
Right.
You got to pony up or get somebody who's got less experience, and invariably the salaries are going up quite a bit.
The salaries are going up too, and let's also not forget that in economic times, less than ideal economic times, medtech tends to be more resilient than many of these other technologies out there and these other industries. We remember the dot-com heyday and the software engineers that
2008.
were getting, we'd have an offer for them, and 5 minutes later they'd have another offer, and a lot of those individuals were giving us a ring when things got tight outside of medtech because medtech remained fairly strong.
Well, that's why we picked medtech, or I picked medtech 29 years ago, not for a pat on the back. It was a calculated decision because I said, give me an environment that has a built-in governor or regulator on it.
Right.
And so with that, you do have a regulator via the FDA. And so what that does is limits explosive growth. and therefore eliminates bubbles.
Yeah.
And so you bring up a great point I hadn't even thought of previous to this, is you come into this industry, I don't know, other than for just being a lousy software girl or guy, software people don't get downsized. And if they do, within an hour and a half, they've got 2 offers from other players.
In the high demand spaces, absolutely. So yeah, medtech does tend to hold on in terms of resiliency and growth and opportunity, and you can continue to contribute long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so here's advice. If you're in medtech now, and we especially see the capabilities in the 2 hot areas. So San Francisco area has it, and the Boston area, we'll talk about that later too, certainly starting to get it again, is do not be afraid to step out of medtech for a career move. So cut your teeth in medtech for the first 5, 6, 7 years, certainly. Fall in love with it, and you will. Be sure that if you're a player, if you're incompetent, no matter what industry you go into, if you go off the reservation for one job, and it makes sense, that it's a data-centric, cloud-connected consumer product, and it's not hard to connect dots on how to come back in, you can tremendously, one, increase your skill sets outside of a group think in medtech. You can up your salary. And you can learn things that when you bring them back into medtech, they will seek you out.
Right.
Because you learned how to do something different, and typically, because there are no regulations, you can try things in that environment that, if not but for, you wouldn't be able to try in medtech.
Right. No, exactly. And we have several very young stealth startups that are brilliant in medtech and are, in particular, looking for the consumer experience too, because there's things about the consumer side that medtech just doesn't have. For instance, scalability. There's not many organizations that could go to zero in medtech. They can go from 0 to 100 million in a year. Consumer, it happens all the time. So there are things both pre-commercial as well as commercial that are very attractive. So if you're in consumer and you're interested in potential opportunity to be a big fish in a small pond, medtech there has never been a better time to consider medtech opportunities.
Yeah, and to my market development people too, I would say in the Bay Area, which is 25% of our book or so, 1 out of 2 marketing roles these days, whether it's as low level as a product manager up through an EVP, they are looking for direct-to-consumer experience, and having launched a product in a direct-to-consumer marketplace with medtech.
Right.
And it's not just the aesthetic market.
No.
It's not just the ophthalmology market. It's not just the self-pay market. You're seeing more and more as you drive down I-95 here, you can see on the side of the road telling my grandmother, come get a makoplasty.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
At University of Miami.
Yep, the consumer is driving their healthcare more than ever before. So all of these avenues allow for the individual to do so, and the marketing direct to them is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Physicians are business people. They have to be.
Well, they're lousy business.
Well, they're in business, I should say. They're in business.
Oops, cut that, Walter. So anyway, I think the lines are terribly blurred in a good way. Medical device, consumer products, the right consumer products, and it will continue to be that way. And again, we already talk about it ad nauseum. Google, Microsoft, Apple are all moving into the medtech industry, and they're really consumer products. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Look for opportunities. Don't be afraid to be a first mover into the consumer tech market intelligently, and you heard it here first. So another episode of On the Line. I'm Joe Mullings.
And I'm Holly Scott.
Have a great day.